You know, it's funny how we could just take the most basic things for granted.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you get a headache.
Huh?
You just grab a bottle of Tylenol
Right.
without even thinking twice about it.
Yeah.
But this deep dive, we're going to look back at how that sense of safety was completely shattered back in 1982
Okay.
with the Tylenol murders.
Wow.
And get this,
Yeah.
this case,
Mm-hmm.
it's still unsolved.
It's chilling, isn't it? To think that something so ordinary, so commonplace as a simple over-the-counter painkiller
Right?
could become such a weapon of fear.
Yeah.
It really forced everyone to kind of reevaluate their trust in the most everyday products.
Exactly.
The things we just assume are safe.
Yeah, we're going to take you back to the Chicago suburbs in 1982.
Okay.
So imagine it's just a normal day.
Uh-huh.
People are going about their business.
Right.
And suddenly, people start dying mysteriously.
Oh, wow.
The very first victim was a 12-year-old girl named Mary Kellerman. She took a Tylenol for a sore throat and collapsed.
It's just heartbreaking to think about, you know?
Yeah.
And the tragedy didn't end there.
Yeah.
Or just the next few days. 6 more people
In the Chicago area.
in the Chicago area died under similar circumstances.
Wow.
And they were all from cyanide poisoning.
And what's so disturbing is it wasn't just a trace amount of cyanide.
No, not at all.
It was 65 milligrams in those capsules.
That's way more than a lethal dose.
Like way more.
You know, this wasn't just some accidental contamination. This was a deliberate act with a clear intent to kill.
That's bone-chilling.
It really is.
It's like something out of a horror movie.
Yeah.
How did they even figure out that it was a Tylenol? Like, how is that the common link?
Well, it was really the authorities' quick thinking and their thorough investigation.
Okay.
They noticed that all the victims had recently taken extra-strength Tylenol.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine the panic?
Oh, yeah.
People were emptying their medicine cabinets. Hospitals were just flooded with people terrified that they might have unknowingly
Oh, my God.
taken a poison pill.
Yeah.
Tylenol, a brand that had always been, you know, synonymous with safety and relief,
Uh-huh.
suddenly became this symbol of fear.
Okay, so let's unpack this a bit.
Sure.
How did Johnson & Johnson, the company that makes Tylenol,
Right.
how did they handle this absolute nightmare?
Well, their response is actually still studied today in business schools and crisis management courses
Wow.
because they did almost everything right.
Okay.
Instead of, you know, trying to downplay the situation or shift blame,
Mm-hmm.
they immediately halted production of Tylenol
Wow.
and issued a nationwide recall of 31 million bottles.
31 million bottles.
Think about that.
That's a lot of bottles.
That recall alone was worth over $100 million back then.
Wow, that's a huge financial hit.
It was a massive hit.
They really put their money where their mouth was.
Absolutely. And they didn't stop there.
Okay.
They were completely transparent throughout the investigation. Cooperating fully with law enforcement,
Uh-huh.
they set up a hotline for concerned customers
Oh, wow.
and offered a reward for information leading to the arrest of
Yeah.
whoever was responsible.
So they didn't just protect their customers.
No,
They actively tried to find this perpetrator.
exactly.
That's pretty remarkable.
It is.
But it still makes you wonder,
yeah,
did people ever fully trust Tylenol again after this?
that's a great question.
Yeah.
And while the company took all the right steps,
Uh-huh.
there's no doubt that the Tylenol murders had a lasting impact on
Right.
consumer perception. Even though Johnson & Johnson wasn't at fault, that association between their product
Yeah.
and these horrific deaths
Yeah.
was just really hard to erase from the public's mind.
It's understandable.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got this massive recall.
Right.
A company doing everything they can to help the investigation.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the investigation itself?
Yeah.
Did they ever find out who did this?
Well, that's where this case takes another really strange turn.
Uh-huh.
Despite a massive investigation,
Okay.
over 1,200 leads,
Wow.
400 interviews.
Okay.
They never definitively identified the culprit.
Wait, seriously?
I know, it's incredible.
With all that effort, they came up empty-handed.
Yeah. It's one of the most frustrating things about this case.
Yeah.
One of the leads that they followed involved an extortion letter.
Extortion.
Yeah. A man named James William Lewis
Okay.
sent a letter demanding $1 million to stop the killings.
Hold on.
Yeah.
Extortion,
Yeah.
for our listeners who maybe aren't familiar with that term,
Sure.
can you break this down a bit?
Yeah, extortion basically means threatening someone with harm
Okay.
to get something, usually money.
Uh-huh.
In this case, Lewis was demanding $1 million to supposedly stop the poisonings.
Wow.
He was eventually convicted of
Yeah.
extortion,
Right.
but they never found any direct evidence
Oh.
linking him to the actual Tylenol poisonings.
So even though he was convicted, it doesn't automatically mean that he was the Tylenol killer.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's a really crucial distinction.
Yeah.
And to make things even more baffling,
Yeah.
the investigation was really hampered by a severe lack of physical evidence
Really?
at the crime scenes.
Like what?
No fingerprints, no witnesses, no security footage.
So it was like the perpetrator just vanished into thin air.
It really was.
You know, it makes you wonder,
Yeah,
how would this investigation unfold today?
right.
Like, what if we had the DNA technology that we have now,
Uh-huh.
or the surveillance capabilities? Would they have cracked the case?
It's a fascinating thought, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have DNA techniques today that weren't even imaginable in 1982.
Right.
Things like familial DNA searching, where you can search criminal databases
Oh, wow.
for partial DNA matches, or touch DNA analysis,
Uh-huh.
where you can get a DNA profile from just a few skin cells
Wow.
left on a surface. Imagine applying those tools
Yeah.
to the Tylenol case. Who knows what they might uncover?
It's almost like this case exists in a time capsule,
It does.
trapped by the limitations of the technology available back then.
Uh-huh.
But even without finding the person responsible,
Right.
this case had ripple effects.
Oh, absolutely.
That are still felt today.
Yes.
Right.
Huge ripple effects.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. The Tylenol murders
Right.
were a turning point in how we think about product safety.
Uh-huh.
Think about those tamper-evident feels
Right.
we now see on every single medicine bottle.
It's true.
Those were a direct result of this case.
You mean those foil seals under the cap
Yeah.
and the childproof caps themselves?
Exactly.
We just take those for granted
I
now.
know, it's amazing, isn't it?
But they were revolutionary back then.
They were.
So those little seals
Yeah.
are a legacy of this tragedy.
They are.
It's strange how something so simple could become such a symbol of safety,
It really is.
you know?
It is.
You would never think of it that way,
No.
but it's true.
It's true. Yeah, it really is a constant reminder that, the world can change in an instant.
Yeah.
And something as simple as a trip to the drugstore can suddenly become fraught with anxiety.
It's true.
And unfortunately, the Tylenol murders weren't an isolated incident.
Right, the copycat cases.
Exactly.
You're talking about the Excedrin and Sudafed poisonings that happened a few years later, right?
Yeah.
Weren't those also cyanide poisonings?
They were. In 1986, there were several deaths linked to cyanide-laced Excedrin capsules
Oh, wow.
in Seattle, Washington. And then in 1991,
Yeah.
there were similar cases with Sudafed capsules
Yeah.
in Washington state again.
Wow.
So these copycat incidents really highlighted this unsettling fact that
Oh, yeah.
tamper-proofing, while crucial, couldn't completely eliminate the risk.
It's disturbing to think that all the media coverage surrounding the Tylenol murders might have actually inspired others to commit similar crimes.
It's possible.
Like the notoriety of that case became a blueprint.
Yeah, almost like a perverse kind of blueprint.
Yeah. Yeah, and it raises an important question.
What's that?
Did all this focus on tamper-proofing?
Right.
While it undoubtedly improved safety, did it also make us more anxious as consumers?
That's an interesting point.
Did it create a hyper-awareness of risk?
Right.
A constant scrutiny of every package?
Yeah.
Even if the statistical probability of tampering was actually quite low.
Like a double-edged sword.
Yeah.
We gained a sense of security,
Right.
but maybe at the cost of some of that innocent trust
Exactly.
that we once had in the products that we use every day.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
That brings us back to the original Tylenol murders.
Uh-huh.
The case that really started it all.
Right.
Which, shockingly, is
Yeah.
still unsolved.
I know, it's incredible to think about.
After over 40 years,
Yeah.
despite periodic reinvestigations and advancements in DNA technology,
Uh-huh.
the culprit remains a phantom.
It's unsettling to think that someone capable of such a calculated and
Progressive.
cold-blooded act
I know.
Could just vanish.
It really is.
That's like a ghost story that continues to haunt us.
It does. It speaks to the enduring power of this case.
Yeah.
How it continues to fascinate and unsettle us.
Right.
The Tylenol murders aren't just a true crime story.
Wow.
They're a reflection of our deepest anxieties about vulnerability.
Right.
The fragility of safety and the complex relationship between corporations,
Yeah.
consumers, and the systems that are meant to protect us.
It makes you think.
It does.
So what does this all mean?
Yeah.
If we step back from the specifics of this case,
Right.
what are the lasting takeaways from this dark chapter?
Well, I think one of the most important lessons is the power of corporate responsibility.
Okay.
You know, Johnson & Johnson, despite not being directly at fault,
Right.
demonstrated that swift action transparency
Yeah.
and prioritizing consumer safety
Right.
can actually build trust even in the midst of a crisis.
It's proof that companies don't just sell products. They have a responsibility to the people who use them.
Exactly.
And that doing the right thing,
Yeah.
even if it's costly, can actually strengthen a brand's reputation in the long run.
Absolutely.
It's a good lesson to learn.
Yeah, and on a societal level, you know,
Yeah.
the Tylenol murders forced us to confront the vulnerability of our consumer system.
Right.
And to implement safeguards
Uh-huh.
that, while not foolproof,
Right.
have undoubtedly made us safer.
But they also exposed a darker side of human nature,
Oh, yeah.
the potential for copycat crimes,
Uh-huh.
the allure of notoriety,
Right?
and this unsettling realization that anyone, anywhere, could be a target.
That's true. And that, I think, is the most unsettling legacy of this case.
What do you mean?
It's not just the unanswered questions or the unsolved mystery.
Yeah.
It's that lingering awareness that even in a world of tamper-proof seals
Right.
and heightened security, there's a certain level of risk we can never fully eliminate.
It really makes you think.
It does.
Will we ever truly know who did it?
I don't know.
And if so, what would justice even look like after all these years?
Right. It's tough. You know, those are questions that continue to haunt investigators.
Yeah.
And the families of the victims, of course.
Right.
And the passage of time often makes these cold cases even more difficult to solve.
Right.
Evidence deteriorates.
Uh-huh.
Witnesses' memories fade.
Yeah.
And potential leads just grow colder
Oh.
each passing year.
It's a tragic reality.
It is.
And for the families of the victims,
Yeah.
it's like that wound never truly heals.
Yeah.
They're left with this profound sense of loss.
Right.
And the question of why.
Uh-huh.
I mean, why did this happen to their loved ones?
By them.
Right.
It's one of the most heartbreaking aspects of this case.
I agree.
Those 7 victims, you know,
Yeah.
Mary Kellerman,
Uh-huh.
Adam Janus, Stanley Janus, Teresa Janus,
Right.
Mary McFarland, Paula Prince, and Mary Reiner.
Yeah.
These were just ordinary people going
Yeah.
about their lives.
Right.
They had families, friends, dreams, and then in an instant, it was all taken away.
It's a stark reminder
It is.
that tragedy can strike anyone, anywhere, at any time.
That's true.
And that even the most mundane activities like taking a painkiller
Right.
can become a source of fear and uncertainty.
You just never know.
Yeah.
But amidst all the tragedy, there's also this message of resilience.
Right.
The way Johnson & Johnson responded,
Right.
the innovations in product safety,
Yeah.
the public's heightened awareness.
Right.
These are all testaments to our collective ability to adapt,
Yeah.
to learn from our mistakes,
Mhm.
and to strive for a safer world.
You're right. It's like a testament to the human spirit.
Exactly.
Got knocked down, but we got back up
Yeah,
and found ways to make things better.
we did.
And those tamper-proof seals,
Yeah,
which we now take for granted,
right.
serves as a constant reminder of that resilience.
They do.
So-
Every time you open a medicine bottle and see that foil seal,
Uh-huh.
you're witnessing a legacy of the Tylenol murders.
It's true.
It's a legacy of loss, but also a legacy of innovation,
Yeah.
of corporate responsibility, and of a society that refused to let fear paralyze it.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Tylenol murders,
Yeah,
I'm left with kind of a mix of emotions.
I bet.
You know, sadness for the victims,
Of course.
frustration that the case remains unsolved,
Mhm.
but also a sense of hope that we've learned from this tragedy
Yeah.
and made the world a little bit safer as a result.
Well said.
Yeah.
The Tylenol murders were really a watershed moment.
Uh-huh.
They exposed our vulnerabilities,
Wow.
reshaped our relationship with everyday products,
Right.
and left an indelible mark on our collective psyche.
It's true.
It's a story that continues to resonate, you know,
I think so.
because it speaks to something fundamental
Yeah.
about the human experience, our need for security,
Right.
our fear of the unknown, and our search for answers in a world that doesn't always provide them.
It's a good point.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the ultimate takeaway for our listeners.
What's that?
The Tylenol murders weren't just a tragedy confined to 1982.
Right.
They were a wake-up call
Uh-huh.
that continues to reverberate today.
Yeah.
A reminder that even in a world striving for safety and control.
Right.
There are forces beyond our grasp, motives we may never fully comprehend,
Yeah.
and consequences that ripple through generations.
It's true.
It's a story that encourages us to be vigilant,
Mm-hmm.
to question,
Yeah.
and to never take our safety for granted.
Well said.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
It was my pleasure.